we got this set up so that it was basically giving us the ability to create a couple of different things and select those things. Today we're going to be trying to grab a string from the user so we can enter the name of the new side pack there. I figured before we do that, I might just step in a little bit and talk about project planning. So I use Todoist. You can kind of use whatever you want to. I've used Trello before. Big projects, a lot of times use something like Jira, but that's more for corporate level, like big teams, lots of money. I find Todoist is pretty easy. When you are designing any kind of software product, or really any kind of product that involves programming, it's important to be really specific in your goals. So I have, for instance, this is my task for today. Add text entry dialog, get site pack creation working. In other words, I know what that means because I'm a programmer. Sometimes you want to get even more specific. So for instance, on the sprite sheet popover, the one that pops up when you hit this blue button right now, you have create popover, which I've actually done previously. Tap outside of popover to close and cancel it. Tap a title to edit it. New sprite sheet opens the title editing mode. So these are all specific things that I need to accomplish with that pop out there. So anyways, it's worth thinking about, like really carefully thinking through each step of your design before you do it and being as specific as possible with your tasks. You can see here I even have time estimates in terms of how long things would take. These turned out to be much lower. These are much tighter estimates than I expected to, because this is how much this would take me if I was coding it in something I was really familiar with. But given that that's not where we're at, things are taking me a lot longer, and that's okay. It's important to give yourself time when you're learning how to do something. But today, this is the task. Add the text entry dialog, get side pack creation working. Give me a second. All right, so I have no idea how to collect a piece of text. I don't know if there's a dialog box or something like that you need. So I'm going to just do a little bit of research here. Okay, so that's the editor. A lot of people are saying that. Editor, utility, display dialog. So those are all just tools that are used when you're in the editor mode. In other words, when you're in this mode. I need something that collects data from the user when they're actually using the application. So I think my best bet is probably going to be to use another panel. So this is going to be exciting. This is actually something I'm probably going to reuse. So I might even try to make this modular, and we can talk a little bit about what modularity is and what that means. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, like that. Okay. All right. So what we're going to want to do is we're actually want to create this piece of UI ourselves. Now, if I zoom out here, so a lot of things are easier in this particular design because the iPad is always the same size. When it's time for me to actually put it on the iPad, I'm going to ensure that the iPad only shows up in landscape mode, which is actually in the build settings here. So we'll get to that later. It's going to be a little while before we worry about that at all. Which means that I can basically define this box to look however I want to. And I think what I want to do is I want to see what options we have in the modern UI pack. So we have a movable window, which I might consider actually for some later stuff, but that's not really what I want right now. the window manager. Interesting. Window manager's here. What happens when I run this? Okay, that's actually very cool. So that's like a tab system. That's definitely something we could use in the future. However, it's not something we really need right now. But this is the kind of thing that I might actually use if I was to do if I want to like add some more stuff. If I want to add if I wanted to, like in a game, for you want to do like so let's say your inventory, character skills, and system menu would be like a great way to use that, for instance. And in this editor, if I end up adding extra metadata, there's a decent chance I'll do something like this. However, okay, hold on. Now, my thought was I could even have it so this popover, when you click on this, it pops up in a thing that has a tab that has the actual sprites there and then like an edit window there, but I think that's a little bit too confusing. You can already see how when I'm designing this, I'm thinking about the user experience, which is, you've heard the term UX, UI before. UI is user interface. It's how something looks. UX is the actual process of stepping through it, user experience. And UI, especially for utility like this, something that has to be a tool, it should be really clean and clear. It doesn't have to be super fancy. UX for an editor needs to be really good. For tools, generally speaking, the UX is the really, really important part. So it should be intuitive. It should be easy to use. It shouldn't slow you down at all. When you're trying to create a tool for anything, but especially for development, you want it to be as frictionless as possible, because that's the thing that's going to make your life a lot easier once you start actually using those things. Okay, so let's see what we got. So we're not going to use that right now, but that is pretty cool. I like to remember it. Part of me wants to make a new canvas that we can display on top of this when needed. The other option is that, much like here we have this panel overlay, we could actually just use that. So based on my research, one of the things that matters for performance reasons is that when you have a canvas like that, if something changes, then the entire canvas will update. So if you have like a really complex interface, it's good to have multiple canvases, because basically if anything, any of the information that feeds into this changes, then it causes the entire thing to regenerate. But for one thing, I don't know a lot about that, and I'm not sure how much that's going to affect this, because we don't actually have a crazy high interface, and our performance requirements here are not super high. So I think what I'm going to do for now is I'm actually just going to create a panel that's going to be my background. So I'm going to turn that dark like that. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I could make this smaller if I wanted to. In fact, that's how I'm going to make the second stage. But I don't want you to be able to, as long as this box is up, I don't want you to be able to click anything else underneath it. So if I run this right now like it is, I don't think it should let me click through. You can see that? Everything else is invisible, which is exactly what we want when we have a dialog box up. Because a lot of times, another beginner mistake, especially when you have this much control over the interface, is that you'll have something that's manipulatable here, but you leave the interface under it still accessible, which means you can do stuff like you're typing your name while you're simultaneously deleting it or adding something new over here, which causes a lot of problems. So you generally, with a dialog box especially, limit interaction to just what's in the box. You can think of it almost like a flow. So we have our basic. Let's see if I deactivate the thing here. We have our basic interface here, and then we suddenly activate it, and so we have a basic interface here where stuff's happening, and then we need a piece of information like a yes/no answer, or like a piece of text entry, and so we show this, and then you have to give some kind of answer, even if that's a cancel option. Okay, so we're going to add to that a second panel, which we're going to make smaller. to center it. The actual layout of this doesn't matter a whole lot to me personally because I'm just making a tool, but I do want it to be good still. I'm going to give myself enough space, and then inside of that I'm going to use the Modern UI pack, and I'm going to use their input field to, let's go with standard middle aligned. Look at that, very pretty. Okay. So the reason I'm not using the multi-line one is because I actually only want you to be able to enter the name of the side pack. And then underneath of that, I'm going to add a, oops, wrong one. I'm going to add a button. Let's just say basic green. And then I'm going to add a button. Should probably do rounded, just because. Oops. Just because everything else is rounded. All the other UI that I'm using is rounded. It's good to have some consistency of some kind. Alright, so we're going to do Modern UI pack. We're going to do button, rounded, green one. Why is it doing like that? That's bizarre. Might just be an issue with that specific object from that library. That's fine. We're just going to use this one anyway because it fits the rest of our design. There's something weird going on here. Okay, I'm going to just go ahead and save this, exit out of it, and get back into Unity Hub. Open that again. Clearly we're running into some kind of Unity UI bug. Alright, let's see if it works a little better now. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. So our content here, we're going to say okay. And then we're going to create another button. Outline. Let's go with white. And this one is going to say cancel. Alright, so go like that, go like that. There's one more thing I'm kind of curious about here, just because it would make sense. Modal window, style, standard, with tabs. So if I create this, because if you remember in the first video, we tested this out, and it just has like an yes or no, okay kind of option. So on confirm, on cancel. So unfortunately, I think that's all it is. It's just a yes, no. All right, that's fine. We don't really want that right now. Okay. So what we do want is this. You can see we've talked about the pivot earlier as well. That's what's going on here. So we're going to directly center it there because in this case the pivot is in the center, as you can see here. Pivot 0505. So we're just going to formalize some of these measurements a little bit. say that is, I think honestly, fine. 780. No. 70. With 200, height 55. Salsa pine, let's say minus 40. No. Minus 30. Minus 20. 35. 30. Let's say minus 30. This we're going to also say minus 30. Position is fine. And then this thing has this let's see. So this right here, so the way that these panels work is it actually gives you positions from the edges. So we say 500, 500. That's going to give us an exact thing there. So 130, 700, that's 920. Okay. So now we have the exact distances from the edge as well. And then our thing is still centered. The width is actually just based on the size of the thing, but let's just set it to a even number for our comfort levels. And let's actually put both of these slightly lower. It's possible to be very finicky about these kinds of things. Bottom 930. All right, I'm pretty satisfied with that. The one other thing we're going to do is we're actually going to make sure that this background is both gray and opaque. Because as you can see, it's very slightly not opaque right now. So we're going to make it actually a little bit dark. That, so that our buttons show up. We're going to make it very slightly transparent, but not too much, just because I think it looks kind of cool. Zoom in, you can see it's got rounded corners. That's actually because it uses this default Unity image down here. If we wanted to make like a fancier layout, we could actually do that if we wanted to. Okay, anyway, now we have our thing. Problem, of course, is that when I run this, I can type in it if I want to. I can push buttons, but of course none of them do anything. So the next thing we got to do is we have to figure out a way to make all of this honestly kind of work in a very simple implementation way. So first of all, let's actually kind of let's mess with some of the specifics, and we'll get to coding. Okay, so we've got this text field here, which has all these settings in terms of how it looks. The text it's got nothing in it right now. This is the placeholder, which is something I'm looking for right now. But there's no default text. If I put some default value in here, you can see that when I run it, it would show that instead of it would start with that text actually inside of it, which we don't need to do. So this hide mobile input. That's all we want to do. On value changed, that's something we're going to have to mess with. Custom input field, UI manager input field, text placeholder. Yeah, that's this one. So I click on placeholder. It allows me to set the placeholder there. So we're going to say enter value because we're just going to use it as a generic thing. We should actually connect that though, I think. So basically what we're going to be trying to do here is we're going to try to create a meta a prefab that we can then use whenever we want to elsewhere in this project if we need to. But for right now, we're going to say text entry dialog is what we're going to call that one. We're going to say text field OK button, cancel button. All right. Okay. We got the placeholder there if we want it, which we can actually access from this text fields placeholder item down here. I think text element 2. All right. So we got a script to write now. So I'm gonna put my code here. The reason I'm going to do that is because this is the fully parent object for the entire dialog system, which means that if I hide it, the dialog goes away. So that's the object that I want to access if I want to hide or show this thing. So I'm going to go to scripts down here. Go to UI. And when I talked about the architecture in the first one, I mentioned that a controller, as I'm defining it, is a piece of code that specifically deals with something. It's something that controls a piece of UI. It doesn't deal with game data. It doesn't deal with anything else. It actually just covers UI. So I'm going to create a text dialog controller here. All right. I'm going to open, double click on, opens it up in Writer, which is great. All right, so now we actually start planning the code. So you can see here the things that I need. So I need a text value. So let's actually start with the method I actually want to call. So I like to design things really modularly, which means that I'm going to add a bunch of code into this controller, but when I actually want to get some text, I literally just want to write something along the lines of text dialog dot get text to prompt the user to enter some text. So that's what I'm going to do right here. So I'm going to make this public void get text, and I'm going to give it, I'm going to allow the user to pass in the placeholder, and then I'm going to say, so here, this is what I need. So if you remember in the last episode, we created a delegate. Now I've only done this once in C#, which is in the last episode. So I'm going to open lepton, which is, as I've mentioned a couple times before, it's a gist manager. So that's actually syncs up with your GitHub. And then it allows you to keep just a bunch of code snippets. It's one of the best tools I'd recommend to any programmer. So right here, I've got this one using delegates for callbacks in C#. So I got to define the delegate here, just like that. So here we go. I say text callback delegate. I'm going to say string response string. Let's see. String. User response. All right. So now I've created a delegate. I don't really care about the namespaces if I'm being super honest right now. And then I can go like this. Okay. Now, the reason I did that is because when I actually want to get a piece of text, I can pass in the placeholder, which will show up here. So enter value is what that's going to replace. And then the callback, if you remember from our last episode, is something that when this is done, it'll use this callback that's passed in to return a user response. All right. So basically, the way I'm going to want to use this, we can actually put this in here now for text, is inside of, what do we want? Packlist controller? No, inside of the model manager. We're going to add a new UI connection, which is public text dialog controller. Let's use this classic camel case versus caps case here. Do we got any errors? Not really, as far as I can tell. So when you create a new one like that, this is what I want to do. So I want to say side pack equals new side pack, and then I'm going to grab text dialog dot get text placeholder, enter side pack name, callback, that's pretty cool. I wasn't actually aware that we could do this for sure, but so this is using something called fat arrow notation. Now, something you noticed last time was we actually used the word delegate here, but apparently you don't have to. We're going to actually see if that's true. So we're going to say callback gives this one argument, response, passes it to this function, which we're going to say this new pack that we just made, new pack dot name equals response. And then, and only then, are we going to add it to our list of packs and then update the other UI. Which means that essentially what we're doing here is we're saying the text dialog controller needs to get a piece of text. This is the thing it'll see, and then the callback will take the response from the user and create these new things. And there's one other thing we want to do, which is, you notice on here, there's a cancel button. I'm going to set up so that cancel button returns a null string. So we're going to say if response non equals null, do all this other stuff. And that what that means is if there is no response from the user, then let's see. What does that mean? I mean, I think what that means is just like, nah, that's fair enough, I guess. So if response So basically, if the user actually enters a value, then do the stuff. If they hit cancel, which will return null from the callback, don't do anything. Now we're going to test that works before we go any further. So we're just actually going to say we're not going to bother with the rest of this UI at all. Leave that alone for now. We're just going to say callback string, like that. And this will just test to see if it's working. All right, so now we go back to Unity, and we got to wire up the things that we just made actually still. So on text entry dialog, we have to enter the text dialog controller like that. And then on the model manager, we now have this text dialog controller here. Let's say the text entry dialog like that. And then on top of everything else, we actually want to make sure this is deactivated by default. Hit play. Now, we're going to hit this. Look at that callback string. So our callback is working correctly. Now we just need to put the rest of it together. So when the user wants to get a text, this is how we're going to handle this. So first of all, we're going to put some things together that we can wire up. So we're going to say public. Let's see what we got. Okay, so we got text entry dialog over here. What do we got? So we want access to the placeholder. The placeholder setting. Where is that? I had it a second ago. There it is. It's text mesh pro text. I think I can just do that like that. This. Let's find out. Placeholder text. I'm going to see if that's true. We're going to say public I actually think we're going to do the rest of it a little bit the other way around. So something else you'll notice here is that the text field has a on value changed option. Each of these buttons has an on click option, which we dealt with the other time, the on click event. So we don't actually have to link these up. We can actually go the other way. We can add our functions here that we want to deal with. So that's just a string function. So let's say public void set text string new value. And let's say public void on hit. Okay. Say public void on hit cancel. Now, if we were fancy, we'd do some animations and stuff as well, but that's honestly a problem for another time. I don't really care about that right now because, partially because this tool is only for me. I'm not going to pretty it up too much. So we need some private values as well. So we're going to say private input text. Sorry, private string input text, because this C# is what you call a strongly typed language, unlike JavaScript. Private text callback delegate. Callback. So if you recall in the previous episode, we did not have to store. We didn't end up having to store the callback, and that's because we were calling the callback from this same thing here. There's still a way we could do that. We can instead wire the button in here and programmatically add the on click to that button right there. But instead of that, we're actually going to put the callback here. So we're going to say callback equals callback. We're going to say input text equals blank, like that. One other issue we need. We actually do need to store that that input. Okay. Here we go. So that's a text field. text area. I think we're just text field is good. Text Mesh Pro input field. In that case, we do not actually need to do this one. So we're going to say you know what? I'm pretty sure we can just do this as well. That means we can get rid of that one. So we're going to store the callback. We've got the public text and input field. We got on OK, on cancel. So we're going to when this starts. We're also going to say input field dot text equals blank, like that. And then we're going to just show. We're going to show the thing, which means just game object dot set active true, like that. So game object dot set active is like a really common Unity thing. Any game object can be set active or not active, and that basically just means whether or not it shows up in the view hierarchy. The script that's on here is still active. I'm pretty sure it's not going to update at all, but it's still there. So if I call this .get text, then I'll set it active as true, which basically has the effect of clicking this box up here, turning it on or off. This is the active box. So if I do set active true, it's going to go dink like that, and it's going to show up. All right. So I'm going to do one more private method that I can use to standardize both of these. I'm going to say private void send response string response. Okay, like that. And what this is going to do is it's going to say callback response and then game object set active false. So what it's going to do is going to return the response and set active. So here's what we're going to do. Send response null. Now if you recall, if there's a null response, it will be as if the user hit cancel and the results will be discarded. If we hit OK, then what it's going to do is going to say send response input field dot text, like that. This stuff we do not need because it's not part of a game loop. It's just a piece of UI. What's the problem here? The namespace. Okay, that's fine. The last thing we have to do is wire all of that up. So, text entry dialog, we have here the placeholder text, we have the input field, and then we've got these buttons to connect. All right. So, first of all, let's see if this works. Might not work. All right. This is always the problem I have with Unity, is understanding which of these scripts correspond. So let's see. TMP input field, I think might be it. Let's see. No, that's for that one. Let's check it. Now let's try it. Okay, so we got the text entry dialog here. So one other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this lock button up there, which basically makes this interface stay here, but if I'm clicking on other things. So I'm going to say placeholder. Now it works. So right, it's got placeholder, it's logged in there. I can take my text field, drop it here. It should work just fine, I think. Oh, one other thing we need to do. You notice we send the placeholder here. One of the things that's kind of cool is that if it's gray, that means it's not being used right now. It's just I'm not 100% sure that VS Code does this, but it's a useful little thing. So reset the input field, and then we're going to say placeholder text equals placeholder, which means that it'll set the placeholder to whatever we want it to be. All right, so go there. Then we're going to add the on click for these buttons. We still have that locked. Okay, so we're going to unlock this. Click on this button. And what I'd like to know is if I can actually just drag this there, but no, alas. Okay, here we go. Okay, so you can see what I did there is I set the on-click event for OK to text dialog controller on hit OK, and I'm going to do the same thing for on cancel. So I'm going to say new event. I'm going to drag that same text entry dialog into the object field. We're going to set text dialog controller, which is a thing on that thing over there, and then we're going to say on hit cancel. Save my scene because I always forget to do that in Unity. Fire up. Let's see what happens. Okay. Nothing's happening right now because this should not be on. That should only happen when you create a new thing. Hi Joel, I just noticed you were on there. I don't know when you sent this text, but quick recap is I'm basically trying to set it up so when I click add side pack over here on the left, I will get a string that I can use to set the side pack name. And then so my entire time here today has basically just been building this text entry dialog to do that. So we're going to test it out and see if that works. Okay, so we got these three previously made ones. Click that, boom. This pops up here. Enter side pack name. I got my cancel. I got okay. If I hit cancel, nothing happens. So that's correct. If I hit plus and then I enter okay, this is another problem we have. If I do that, it's just going to create an empty one. So there's one other thing we have to do first. We're going to say on hit okay if input field dot text dot length less than 1 return. Ideally, you want to do more of this. You want to show like an error message, whatever the case is, but I don't care enough for that right now. I'm just not going to let you hit OK if you haven't entered some text. Okay, now plus hit OK. It's not going to work because I have to enter name. My cool pack. Alright, moment of truth. Boom, there it is. Happens down there. Now basically, so I have this whole thing which can do that, and I don't need to even worry about this file anymore. I can close that file. Now whenever I need a piece of text, I can just use this thing, text dialog controller.get text, enter my thing, have my callback response, and that's it. I've taken care of it. I can now get a text from anywhere in the thing. So what I'm going to do now, because this is what you should always do in my opinion, is I'm going to reopen that script. I'm going to copy the whole thing. Open lepton. I'm going to say text entry dialog in Unity with modern UI. I'm going to add to this file. I'm just going to paste the whole thing in there. The reason I'm doing that is because in a future project, if I have modern UI or whatever, rather than rewriting this entire control, I can just literally pop that in there. And then I'm going to say UI setup.md. This explains how to create the piece of UI. Create a shading / container panel to the dialog panel. Add a modern UI text input and OK and cancel button. Add the text dialog controller script to the container panel and wire up elements, wire up OK and cancel buttons to on hit OK and on hit cancel, wire up controller itself to parent manager, and then we have the call. Call thusly. And that's pretty much it. So, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. We'll be in there next time.